Hello again. Today's woodworking excursion was originally planned to be a stool that swivels, but seeing as how I can't really justify making another stool, I've decided to change it into something else. By the way, I'm filming this from a stool. So the problem is, how do we make a bearing from just common materials? You're gonna need a router for this project. This channel is made with a round nose bit, and this flat part, this seat here, it's just made from a straight bit. These are just marbles. This spacer that keeps all the marbles aligned where they belong is just made from 1/4-inch masonite. As I said before, this wooden bearing was originally intended to be for a stool, and with so many marbles inside of it, it can take a serious force. I actually stood on it and spun around until I was dizzy a few times, so it can definitely withstand weight. But I'm going to use it for something a little more lightweight in this video. I'm going to make a Lazy Susan. Let's go over the stuff we need first. You're going to need a big piece of 5-ply birch plywood. I wouldn't recommend using a solid piece of wood because plywood has grains going in alternating directions, so it's less susceptible to expansion from moisture content changes. The second thing that you're going to need is a piece of masonite. I'm using a piece of 1/4-inch. It's the same stuff that you would find in a clipboard. You're also going to need a circle drawing device for your router. If you don't have one, it's not the end of the world. You can make one relatively easily. This is what I made for mine. You just screw through this block of polyethylene here into the piece that you want to make a circle, and then it rotates around the screw. If you don't already have a circle making device, you can make one pretty easily. Just cut a shape of wood like this, something real skinny, and then you attach this part to the base of your router, and this is where you would put your screw, and it just rotates around the screw. You probably won't be able to see it in the video, but one side of this masonite is really rough and the other side is really smooth. So because I want to run my router around in a circle to take down the thickness and make it smooth, I'm going to belt sand the rough side first so that the router moves around easier. I briefly considered putting it into the planer, but if you've seen the bandages on my fingers in previous videos, then you probably know that the last thing I want to do this afternoon is change planer blades. Okay, let's get the unpleasant part over with. Connect the diagonals to find the center. I normally pilot drywall screws with a 1/8-inch drill bit, but this time I'm going to use a 3/32 because I want it to be really tight. We want the screw to be as tight as possible and still allow the mechanism to move freely. I locked my router at the edge of the material, and now I'm going to make a pass around that's going to plane the thickness down just a little tiny bit, just enough to get it smooth. I completed the entire circle, and then I moved the router bit in a little bit to take more material out of the center. If you see any fuzz sticking up from the route, be sure to sand it down. You don't want it to hold the router up and change the setting. Also, don't make the mistake I just made. Turn the router, not the workpiece. If you turn the workpiece, it might loosen the screw. Now I'm going to change my bit to a smaller bit so that I can just make the cuts in the circle. It might be tempting at this point to use a jigsaw or a bandsaw or some other means of cutting the circle, but don't make that mistake. I did it last time and I ended up drum sanding for a half hour. I'm going to make my first cut right down the edge of that outside circle. I know you're excited to cut the inner circle, but don't. You need the center so that we can do some geometry. I decided to make the ring 1 inch and 1/8 instead of 1 inch. So I'm going to draw that first. This line represents the cut that I'm going to make later. Now I need to find halfway between the existing cut and the imaginary cut and make a circle there. Put the ruler right through the midpoint of the circle, and where it crosses the center circle, make a mark on both sides. Use your existing compass setting to find this point and this point. Your compass setting should be right now the radius of the center circle. Now move to the point that you just made to find that point. And over here, if you can see the mirror. Now from these points, you should meet the opposite point. I don't know if you can see it, that you made with the ruler. What you did just now is, here I'll move. What you did is bisected the circle into 6 pieces. The 6 spots that we just made represent where we're going to put our 6 holes for our marbles and our spacer. Actually, I don't think it's called a spacer, I think it's called a cage. But you can see in the prototype that I put 12 in. So if you'd like to put more to make the bearing stronger, find the center between these two and repeat the process. I recommend that you put all 12 holes into the cage now. You can just leave 6 marbles out if you don't think that you require the strength. You want to drill a hole that leaves around a 1/16 of an inch of play around each one of the marbles. Also, use a scratch awl to make a divot in the wood before you drill so the bit doesn't wander. Okay, back to our router compass. Now we can set it up so that the cutting bit goes right down the outside line to free up our cage. On this final pass that frees the part up, be sure that you have your cage clamped down so it doesn't get damaged when it's released. After some hand sanding, it turned out pretty nice. You want to sand it really smooth to reduce as much friction as possible because this thing spins. Now I'm going to go clean up that brown dust that's flaring up my disorder. That does it for part 1. Thanks for watching.